introduction and the endorsement. Cambrell, you're fabulous. All right, sit down, sit down. It's good to see all of you. Oh, wow, what a group. I love you too. So I thought we'd have some fun today. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself, tell you a little bit about why I'm in this race, and we'll take some questions. And then when we get through, if anybody wants to, I'll stay as long as you want, and we'll do selfies. The true measure of democracy. Oh, you bet. So I got to get myself where I can walk more here. Let me tell you about me. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. We got one. Bless your heart. Okay. There aren't that many of us from Oklahoma, but we hang in there. I am what used to be called a late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. I have 3 much older brothers. To this day, they are called the boys, to distinguish them from the surprise. And all 3 of my brothers went off and joined the military. That was their path. Bless them all. That's exactly right. Oldest one, Don Reed, was about 5.5 years off and on in combat in Vietnam. We were really lucky to get him back home. We were. And middle brother, John, he spent about 1.5 years, a little less than that, about a year, stationed overseas. Third brother, David, trained as a combat medic, which has given rise to a rule in our family: never choke around David. To this day, the man carries a sharpened pocket knife, and he is convinced he could do an emergency tracheotomy. We have some very exciting moments at Thanksgiving. Somebody goes, and we all just back out of the room. Not me, man, not me. I love my brothers. They all live back in Oklahoma now. They're all retired, live close to each other back there. I get back whenever I can. But when we were growing up, our daddy had a lot of different jobs. He sold paint. He sold fencing. He sold carpets. He sold housewares. And when I was in middle school, the boys, by then, were all gone. And it was just my mama and my daddy and me. And my daddy had a massive heart attack. And for a long time, we thought we were going to lose him. But he pulled through, only he couldn't go back to work for a long, long time. And to this day, I still remember the day that we lost our family station wagon. I remember how my mother used to tuck me in at night, and she'd give me a kiss on the forehead and pat the blankets, and she'd always smile and turn toward the door, and I always knew what was coming. She'd walk outside, close the door, and lean back against it and start to cry. She never wanted to cry in front of me. This is when I learned words. Words like mortgage and foreclosure. And then one day, I walk into my folks' bedroom, and laid out on the bed is the dress. Now, some of you in this audience will know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And the dress is laid out on the bed, and my mother is at the end of the bed, and she's pacing. She's in her slip and her stocking feet, and she's saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She had never worked outside the home, and she was terrified. And after a while, she looks up and she sees me standing in the door. I'm just a kid. And she looks at me, doesn't say a word, looks at that dress, looks back at me, and she walks over, wipes her face off, puts on the dress, pulls on her high heels, and she walks to the Sears, where she gets a full-time minimum wage job answering phones. That minimum wage job saved our house, and it saved our family. And I always think of this as the lesson my mother taught me. No matter how hard it looks, no matter how scared you are, when it comes down to it, you reach down deep, you find what you have to find, you pull it up, and you take care of the people you love. That's what we do. And it was only years after that that I came to understand that wasn't just what my mama taught me. It's what millions of people do across this country every day. No matter how scared they are, and no matter how hard it looks, they reach down deep, they find what they have to find, they pull it up, and they take care of themselves and take care of the people they love. That's what we do as Americans. But it was only years after that that I came to understand. That same story is also a story about government. Because when I was a girl, a full-time minimum wage job in America would support a family of 3. It would pay a mortgage, it would cover the utilities, and it would put food on the table. Today, a full-time minimum wage job in America will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight. And understand this, that difference is not a difference that just happened accidentally. It's not a difference that just happened over time. That difference is about who government works for. Your government in Washington. When I was a girl, the question asked in Washington about the minimum wage was, what does it take a family of 3 to make it in America? What does it take a family of 3 to get a toehold in America's middle class? What does it take a family of 3 to have something solid that they can build a future on? Today, the question asked in Washington is, where do we set the minimum wage to maximize the profits of giant multinational corporations? Well, I don't want a government that works for giant multinational corporations. I want one that works for our families. Yep. So there it is. Like I said earlier, my 3 older brothers, they all went off to the military. That was their path to America's middle class. That was their chance. That was their way. Me, I had a whole different idea. I have known what I wanted to be since 2nd grade. Oh, you laugh. What, you didn't decide till what, 4th grade? Yeah. 5th grade in the back over there, yeah. I've known what I wanted to be since 2nd grade, and I have never varied from it. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for America's public school teachers? Yep. I love it. And just so you all know, man, I invested early. I used to line up my dollies and teach school. I had a reputation, tough but fair. Totally into it. Problem was, by the time I graduated from high school, we didn't have the money for a college application. much less to send me off to 4 years at university. So, like a lot of Americans, I don't have a straight line story. I have a story that has some twists and turns. And here's how my story goes. So, starts out, I get a scholarship to college. Go, high school debaters. Yes. Yay. And then, at 19, I fall in love, get married, drop out, and get a minimum wage job. Yay. And look, I picked it. This was my choice. Going to be a good life, but not the dream. A good life, but not what I'd set my heart on all those years. So I thought, okay, that's it. I gave up on that. This is what I chose. And then we're living down in Texas at the time. We're down in Houston, Texas, and I found it. A commuter college, 45 minutes away, that cost $50 a semester. There it is. And for a price I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year diploma. I became a special education teacher. I have lived my dream job. So we've got some public school teachers here. Some special needs teachers. We got some special needs teachers. Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, now I'm going to count on you to back me up on this. This is not a job. This is a calling. This is work we do because we love this work. So I had 4 to 6-year-olds in special ed. To this day, I can remember most of their names and I think all of their faces. I can still tell you stories about it. I love that work. I loved it. And I would probably still be doing it today, but my story has some more twists and turns. So here's how the story goes next. By the end of my first year in teaching, I was visibly pregnant. And the principal did what principals did in those days. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. There it was. So, okay, I'm at home. Now I got a baby, can't get a job. What am I going to do? I'll go to law school. Yay. Yeah, this story has a lot of yay moments in it. So I decided to go to law school. By now we're living in New Jersey. And yay, there we go. By now we're living in New Jersey, found a public law school, Rutgers. Good, good. Go Scarlet Knights. So found a public law school, cost $450 a semester. Baby on hip, went off, did 3 years of law school, graduated, visibly pregnant. You will discover a pattern to these stories. Took the bar and practiced law for 45 minutes. It wasn't for me. So what did I do? I went back to my first love, teaching. I traded little ones for big ones and spent most of my grown-up life teaching in law school. I also made some other changes in my personal life. Husband number 1. Hint, it is never a good sign when you have to number your husbands. Fortunately, I'm only on 2. Husband number 1 and I divided, and then I found my sweetie Bruce, and I've been with him now for 38 years. So that was it. When you find a good one, hang on. So I don't know if this works for everybody, but for me, teaching in law school, I grew up kind of on the ragged edge of the middle class, so I learned about and taught about money. If it was a class about money, I learned it and then I taught it. So I taught contract law and commercial law, I taught the Uniform Commercial Code, I taught payment systems, secured transactions, I taught corporate finance, I taught partnership finance, I taught bankruptcy law, debtor-creditor law, law and economics. If it was about money, I taught it. But there was always one central question that I worked on, and that is, what's happening to working families in America? Why is it that America's middle class is being hollowed out? Why is it that families, people who work every bit as hard as my mother worked 2 generations ago, today find the path so much rockier and so much steeper? And for people of color, even rockier and even steeper. Yep. And the answer is just like the answer about minimum wage. It's about who government works for. Think of it this way. We have a government in Washington, works great for giant drug companies, just not for somebody trying to get a prescription filled. Am I right? Yeah, works great. Works great for anyone who wants to invest in private prisons or private detention centers, just not for the human beings whose lives are torn apart by them. Yep. Works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for the rest of us who see climate change bearing down upon us. And when you see a government that works great for those with money and not so well for much of anyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. Yep. Corruption. And think of it this way. Whatever issue gets you up in the morning, whatever is the issue that brought you here today, whether it's the price of prescription drugs or it's gun safety, criminal justice reform, immigration, health care, student loans, whatever issue brought you here today, I guarantee if there is a decision to be made in Washington, it has been influenced by money. It's been shaped by money. It's been nudged by money. It has been influenced by money. And it's not just the money of campaign contributions, although believe me, that is a big one. It's that and so much more. It's the money that goes into the armies of lobbyists, lawyers, PR firms. It's the money that goes into these so-called think tanks, the bought and paid for experts. Yep. In fact, let me tell you a story about this one. This one really gets me. So you go back and look, late 1980s, early 1990s, we get it on climate change. We don't have all the numbers quite right. We're calling it global warming at that point. But the point is, we get it. Putting this much carbon into the air, into the water, not good. Not good. We know it. The scientists are locked in on the science. And here's the thing, politically. In Washington, Democrats and Republicans are working together. They're together, and they're saying, what do we need to do here? Do we need more regulations for the Environmental Protection Agency? Do we need to put more money into cleanup? What do we need to do to make sure we get on a better path? And then along come the Koch brothers. You've heard of the Koch brothers, right? The Koch brothers, who made their money in fossil fuels, along with some other big fossil fuel companies, along with some big polluters, and they basically get together and say, Congress is starting to look serious about this climate business. Whoa, they're talking about making some big changes here. You know, Congress does that, that's going to bite in to our bottom line. That's going to cut into our profits. That's going to mean we're not going to make so much money. So they've got an investment decision to make. Think about this decision. Now, what could they decide? They could say, you know what, we get it. We get where the future's going. We are going to stop doing carbon-based fuels. We're going to move to clean energy. No, they don't do that. Could have, but they didn't. They could have said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put all of our R&D money into how you get carbon out of the air, how you clean it out of the water, how you clean up. They don't do that. You know what they invest in? Politicians. Yeah, you bet. They invest in Washington. They invest in influence. And understand, it's campaign contributions, it's the lobbyists, it's the think tanks, it's the bought and paid for experts. Where do you think those guys came from who are the science deniers? You know the ones I'm talking about, the guys who stand up and say, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and my doctorate is in members. And, you know, I don't know about this climate thing. We have to remember the dinosaurs loved it, and it was a good time for salad, and whatever crazy stuff they say, right? That goes against what all the scientists are telling us. And why do they do that? Why do you invest in those guys? Think about it this way. It's not because the Koch brothers and those guys don't understand science. They understand it plenty well. What do those bought and paid for experts do, the deniers? They build something. They build an umbrella over all of the politicians. So the politicians can hide under the umbrella and keep taking money from the Koch brothers and keep taking money from the fossil fuel industry and keep taking money from the big polluters, right? And when asked about it, say, oh, I don't know, the science, you know, it's just not clear. I'm not a scientist. I like dinosaurs. Whatever it is they want to say. But understand this. You want to understand the climate crisis in America and in this world today. It is 25 years of corruption in Washington that got us here. So here's the deal. The money has gone everywhere. And if we are going to fight back, it's not going to be enough to say, oh, one little statute over there, 2 regulations over here. No, we need big structural change in this country. Big change. Yep. And let me tell you where I want to start. I want to start by attacking the corruption head on. Just go straight after it. Run straight up the middle. I have had enough of always being on our back foot over the corruption that's going on in Washington. It's time to call it out for what it is and be willing to fight back, and I got a plan for that. Yep. Okay. So, you bet. So here's the good news. I have the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. Yay! Here's the bad news. We need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. Okay, so because money is felt in so many places, there's a lot of moving parts to this plan. So I'm just going to give you kind of some of the highlights for this thing. Part 1, end lobbying as we know it. Here's another. Block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Here's one you may never have thought about, but matters. Make the United States Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics. Isn't that a stunner? Okay, I could do these all night long. But I'm going to do just one more. You really want to hose out some corruption? Here's a way to do it. Make every single person who runs for federal office put their tax returns online. Yeah. Okay, so that's part one. Attack the corruption head on. Part two. When we attack the corruption head on, you start to disturb things, and you got a chance to make some more changes. Here we go. Let's make some structural change in this economy. We got a real problem in this economy. The big part of it is that we just have these giant corporations in industry after industry, in big ag, in big banking, right? One industry after another, big pharma. And the problem with these giant industries is they've swallowed up the little businesses. They've swallowed up the medium-sized businesses. Shoot, they've swallowed up what used to be great big businesses. And they've got so much power. So they have the power. They run over their own employees. They run over their own customers. They run over the communities where they're located, and they call the shots in Washington. So what's it going to take? We need a president who has the courage to enforce our antitrust laws and break up these giants. It's time. Big ag, big tech, we're coming. So that's part one. But you want to think about structural change. It's not enough just to have a federal government and the big corporations. You've got to have more balance in the system. That means we need for employees to have more power. That means make it easier to join a union and to give unions more power when they negotiate. Yep. Unions built America's middle class, and unions will rebuild America's middle class. That's how we do it. Yep. So that gives us some power and some structural change in the system. Let me give you one more. It is time for a wealth tax in America. So here's the basic idea I've got. It says your first $50 million is free and clear. I can see some of you saying, whew, I can deal with this woman, okay? Your first $50 million is free and clear. But on your 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents. And 2 cents for every dollar after that. Now, any of you grow up in where the family owned a home or own a home now, home, farm, something? Yeah, you've been paying a wealth tax, right? It's just called a property tax. And all I'm saying is for the super rich, by the way, you know how many folks would be affected by this? This is the top 1/10 of 1% in America. It's about 70,000 greatest fortunes in America are the only ones that would be touched. All I'm saying is for those guys, let's make your wealth tax not just be about your real estate, but also let's include your stock portfolio, the diamonds, the Rembrandt, and the yacht. Just all of it. Just all of it. And, here's the deal. The billionaires are saying, oh, my gosh, let's tax our accumulated wealth. This is terrible, terrible, terrible. And they say, after all, I worked hard to build that fortune. I stayed up late. Unlike anybody else. I mean, okay, but look, I get it. You had a great idea. You were the one who was able to ride it through. You worked it in your mom's garage or whatever you did. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. But here's the deal. I guarantee you built a great fortune in America, then you built it at least in part using workers all of us help pay to educate. You built it at least in part getting your goods to market on roads and bridges all of us help pay to build. You built it, at least in part, protected by police and firefighters. All of us help pay the salaries for it. And here's the deal. We're glad to do it. We're Americans. We believe in investing in these opportunities and creating these chances. All we're saying is if you make it big, I mean really big, I mean top 0.1% big, pitch in 2 cents so everybody else gets a chance to make it in this country. 2 cents. 2 cents. Oh, because here's the amazing thing. What could we do for 2 cents? Well, how about we start with universal child care for every baby in this country age 0 to 5. 2 cents. 100%. Oh, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in America. And enough of exploiting the largely women, largely black and brown women who do this work. We can raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America. 2 cents. And we can do all of that for our littlest babies. But here's what we can do for K through 12. We can quadruple the funding in Title I schools, the schools that serve our children born into low-income homes. Quadruple it. We can fully fund for the first time IDEA so that any child with a disability gets the education that that child needs to succeed in this world. We can do that, and we can make an historic $100 billion investment into all of our public schools. That averages out to about $1 million for each public school to spend the money in the way they need to spend to provide an excellent education for the children they are responsible for. Yeah. You may have figured out, I believe in public education. We can do all of that on this same 2 cents, and I'm not through yet. We can provide universal, tuition-free, technical school, community college, and 4-year college for any kid who wants to get an education. Anyone. Plus, we can help level the playing field and put $50 billion directly into historically black colleges and universities. Yep. Think about that. So we can do all of that and one more. We can cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who've got it. I just want you to take a deep breath and think about what that means. 2 cents. 2 cents. A 2-cent tax on the fortunes above $50 million, and we can invest in an entire generation of Americans. This This is the possibility here. And I got to do one more when we're talking about big structural change in our economy. After a lifetime of hard work, people are entitled to retire with dignity, and that means protecting Social Security. And I got a plan for that. And here it is. It's pretty straightforward. It says we can increase payroll taxes on the top 2%, and with that, we can expand the viability of Social Security for decades into the future, plus we can increase Social Security checks, monthly checks, by $200 a month and increase disability checks by $200 a month for everyone. 2%. That's it. Okay, so that's part two. Part one, attack the corruption head on. Part two, make some structural change in our economy. Part three, we need to protect our democracy. We need a constitutional amendment to protect the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted. We need to outlaw political gerrymandering. No more. We need to roll back every racist voter suppression law in this country. And just one more. Overturn Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. Okay, so I just want three things. Attack the corruption head on, make some structural change in our economy, 2 cents, and protect our democracy. Now, some folks might think those three are unrelated to each other, but to me, they all come down to one fundamental question, a question we're going to face in 2020, and that is, who gets opportunity in this country? Is opportunity just going to be reserved increasingly for those who are born into privilege? Or are we going to be a country of opportunity? Opportunity so that every kid in America has the opportunity to get a first-rate education. We can do it. So that everyone has an opportunity to get a good job, an opportunity to start your own business. Remember, I was a special education teacher. Opportunity may mean an opportunity to live independently, opportunity to be who you are, opportunity to love who you love and build the family you want to build. That's it. And I'll tell you why. That's how I think of it. Not in a million years did I ever think I would run for public office. I've known what I wanted to do since second grade, teach school. But I'm here because I got the opportunity. I got the opportunity to be a public school teacher because somebody invested. I got the opportunity to be a college professor. I got the opportunity to be a United States Senator, and I got the opportunity to be a candidate for President of the United States of America. Dream big. Fight hard. Let's win. Thank you. Thank you guys over here. Thank you. Thank you. Wendy? Is it Wendy going to do this with me? Q&A? Who's going to do? Oh, we already have done it. Fabulous. We've already done our draw. Good. All righty. Let's have a go. Hi. We're going to do a little Q&A here.
Hi, Elizabeth. I just joined your internship for your candidacy.
Fabulous. All right. Woohoo. Tell me your name.
My name is Lori Berger.
Hi, Lori. It's nice to meet you.
I'm from Myrtle Beach.
Uh-huh.
And we came here today in a caravan.
Good. Good.
Would you say that Republicans are not fiscal conservatives, but borrowers and spenders? Republicans have proven this since Reagan, leaving us with heavy debt and inflation. Clinton left us with a surplus. The Bushes left us with trickle-down tax cuts and a depression and a collapsed economy. And now Trump puts us $1 trillion in debt from the cuts for the rich. How will you fix the mess when you become president to undo the financial disaster debt we will be left with and still be able to pay for and afford the programs that have been neglected by Republicans?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Lori. And by the way, I want to give you two parts to this answer. The first part is the wealth tax, the 2-cent wealth tax. God, I love that wealth tax, right? And by the way, just if anybody was thinking boo-hoo for the billionaires, I just want everybody in here to know the 99%, which might include some of you, the 99% is on target this year to spend about 7.2% of your total wealth in taxes. That's the all-in, how you measure all of your taxes against your wealth. The top 1/10 of 1%, those guys at the top, they're on target to spend 3.2%. Yeah, think about that. So when I first started running for president, I didn't start with promising stuff like universal child care and canceling student loan debt, even though I love that stuff and understand the importance of it and have been there for a long time. I started with the 2-cent wealth tax. I started by talking about some fairness in the system, and that part of the fairness in the system is you got to pitch in something to help make this country run. You got to do this. Guys at the top have got to do it too. They got tremendous opportunities from this country, and good for them. But now they've got their fortunes and their money managers and their PR and their lobbyists, and they're insulating themselves, and they're getting richer faster and faster and faster, and everybody else is getting left behind. So I started with the 2-cent wealth tax, and here's my pitch on this that I love. It's really popular with Democrats. Well, that's why I love Democrats, right? It's really popular with independents. But here comes the best part. A majority of Republicans think it is a great idea. Think about that. So I think we can get our financial house in order if we're willing to take on the special interests, if we're willing to stand up to the lobbyists, if we're willing to stand up to the corporate PACs and all of the giant money-generating outfits out there. But that's what we've got to be willing to do. We want to make real change. That's what it's going to take. Look, you know, a lot of folks say there's gridlock in Washington. No. No. Understand, Washington's working perfectly. It is working beautifully for the super duper rich. And understand it this way. When they wanted their tax break, which you talked about, Lori, you know how long it took them to get it? 5 weeks. Through the House, through the Senate, and signed into law. They went behind closed doors, brought in the lobbyists, brought in the big donors, and wrote out that law, and done. Pass it in the House, pass it in the Senate. And there were folks like me saying, you're going to put us $1 bazillion in debt. You're going to run up our national debt by at least $1.5 trillion because you got no way to pay for this. And you know what I learned? when your ears are stuffed with money, you can't hear. They couldn't hear. What? What? Yeah. So, how are we going to get our house back in order? That's why I started with corruption. It takes the courage to stand up. It takes the courage, I'm just going to be blunt, to run a presidential campaign based on grassroots donations. And volunteers. Thank you, Lori. This is it. This is our chance in 2020 to take it back and to make this country work. And we can do it together. Thank you, Lori. Thank you. It's really great. So glad you're volunteering. Hi.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
I'm a retired public school teacher as
Tell
well.
me your name first.
My name is Mark Mercier.
Hi, Mark. What you teach?
I started with 5th grade and I kind of worked my way back to the little ones in kindergarten,
Okay.
1st grade.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
A lot of energy needed.
Yeah.
But my question is, you haven't mentioned your Medicare for All plan
Yep.
today, and I know you're working on details about it. One question I haven't heard anybody ask you is, if everything goes right and you are the president,
I like that. Say that
Yes.
part again. Good.
how would you go about implementing that? Because I know you can't do it all in one shot. Could you talk about the way that you would phase that in?
So it's a great question, Mark. Let me do as much as I can, okay? Because it is. It's big. It's complicated. So let's start with part one. When you got big, hard questions, always lay out what your values are. And for me, healthcare is a basic human right. We fight for basic human rights. So that's part one. Part two, every single person who is running in the Democratic primary right now for president knows that all across this country, millions of hardworking people are getting crushed by the cost of health care. And it is not sustainable. We just can't keep doing this. Third part, we know for sure, and that is that Medicare is the least expensive way to provide health care coverage for everybody in the country. We know it. So, but it's a big and complex system. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to say, give me a little time as we work through this, because here are the key questions that we've still got to talk about. We know what the end point is. We know where we need to be. What we got to do is we got to do two things. We got to work through the cost part of this. How much is it going to cost and how we're going to pay for it? Because I'm with Lori on this. You need to know. You don't just get to do what the Republicans did, and that is just blow another hole in the budget. You actually need to think through this stuff, and I'm there. So we're going to have a plan on this pretty soon. The other part, you're exactly right, is working through the transitional pieces. And we're just getting those pieces together. Part of it's already laid out in the Medicare for All bill that's been out there now, about 2 years, I think. But we got to fill in some more of the spaces. And I'm sorry I can't do every piece of how the details are going to go as we put it in, but here's what I promise. I'll get a plan on it. Okay? Is that good enough for you, Mark? For now. Can we take it for now? Okay, we'll take it for now. Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi.
My name's Ron Thurlow.
Hi, Ron.
I'm volunteering down in the Myrtle Beach area.
Woo! Thank you, Ron.
And the question I have is, because I haven't heard anything talked about it, is internationally, the country is in a mess.
I know.
You know, our standing is lower than it's ever been in my lifetime, and I'm older than you. So I've never seen us in this kind of moral decline. It feels like, you know, I was a psychotherapist for 30 years, and I talked to a lot of people during that time, and you know, there's a real general goodness in humanity and in the people that live in this country. But the way we look to people overseas now is not like that. It's like we're greedy, we're selfish, we're not willing to share, we're not willing to participate in international, like climate change and just so many problems across the world that being just a selfish, like little island can't work in this day and age.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, let's talk about where we are as a country. And I started out by thinking about this in terms of what have we got to work with as Americans? We have a military that is the finest military on the face of the earth. All three of my brothers served. Our folks in the military will do anything we ask them to do. Their families sacrifice. But part number one is we should not ask our military to try to solve problems that do not have a military solution. It's not right. Places like Afghanistan, it's going to take a negotiated solution. We've been over there now, we're in our 18th year in Afghanistan. I've been on the ground. I've been on the ground with John McCain. I've been on the ground with our leaders, with the local leaders. And you know what we now know? After all this time, we have control over less land than we did before. We have a government that doesn't have the support of its people. Corruption runs rife. The poppy crops, the heroin crops, are bigger than ever. The border between Pakistan and Afghanistan is porous. There are multiple terrorist groups. We cannot solve this problem militarily. And that means we have to think when we're on the international stage about what else is available to us. And the answer is we need to use our diplomatic tools. We need a stronger State Department. We need it fully staffed with good people that we support and that we consult before we do things. We need to use our economic tools. Everybody wants to trade with us. We need to condition that trade on fine. We're glad to trade with you, but you can't be using prison labor. You can't be using child labor. Our workers should not have to compete. And we could use that leverage to help raise around the world standards. We should be doing that, and we should be leading through moral leadership. And let me just give you a couple of pieces of that. Moral leadership means we do not separate children from their families. Moral leadership means we do not cut and run on our allies who fought alongside us. Moral leadership is that we recognize when the earth is on fire, that we will help put out that fire and clean it up. I think you said it exactly right. We are a good people, fundamentally. We are. We are. We want to do the right thing. We are the people who have generation after generation offered an open hand to others around the world who are in trouble. For us to turn our back, for us to have a leader who sucks up to dictators is wrong. So yeah, there's a lot we need to do, but the point is we've got the right foundation. We've got the right principles. We just need to get out there and live our values every single day. We need to So thank you. It's a good question. So I tell you what, thank you is a really good question. I tell you what, let's wrap this up. That way we have time for selfies. But I wanna say something as we get to the end here about this whole business about how you run for president. You know, when I first started doing this, I said I'm going to get in this. I'm going to jump in and try to make this happen. I knew what I'd be fighting for. Same thing I've been fighting for pretty much all my grown-up life. And the best part about it for me was I could talk about what's broken, but I'd also have a chance to talk about how to fix it. And that meant I laid out a lot of plans. And so after the first week or two that I've been doing this, I went back to Washington, and a bunch of experts, also known as senators, came up to me different times, and nicely, but said, that's not how you run for president. Oh, yeah. What you're doing is too hard. People don't want to hear this. And the things you're talking about fighting for, taxing the rich? Are you kidding? Changing immigration policy, taking that fight on? Really? Talking about canceling out student loan debt and making real investments in all of our children. I have a housing plan over there. This is hard, complicated stuff. And they said, you know, the way you run for president, make some vague promises and smile more. So the first time I heard this, I thought, I wonder what the naysayers said to the abolitionists. They said, you know what? America's not going to change. Too hard, quit now. What did they say just a little over 100 years ago, right? To the suffragettes. Too hard, quit now. What did they say to the early union organizers? Too hard, quit now. What did they say to the foot soldiers in the civil rights movement? Too hard, quit now. What did they say less than a decade ago to the LGBTQ community? Too hard, quit now. But they didn't quit. They got organized. They built a grassroots movement. They persisted. And they changed the course of American history. This is our moment in American history. Our moment to dream big, to fight hard, and to build the America of our best values. Let's do